The year was 1916, and the city of New York was a place of relentless noise and perpetual motion. The streets of the Lower East Side were a canyon of tenement buildings, their brick faces darkened by the soot of thousands of coal fires. Horse-drawn wagons clattered over the cobblestones, sharing the road with the rumble of the new electric trolleys, while the elevated trains screeched on iron tracks high above the heads of the pedestrians below. In this crush of humanity, it was easy to disappear, to become a ghost within your own life. It was a city of strangers passing one another in a blur of wool coats and hurried footsteps. Elias Thorne was one such man. He was 34 years old, a quiet man who worked as a ledger keeper for a shipping firm near the docks. He lived in a modest walk-up on Orchard Street, in a building that smelled perpetually of boiled cabbage and damp plaster. His life was measured by the rhythmic ticking of the hallway clock and the steady scratch of his pen against paper. He was not a man given to grand displays of emotion, nor did he seek the bright lights of the theaters or the raucous energy of the saloons. He existed in the margins of the bustling metropolis, a solitary figure navigating the crowded thoroughfares with his head down and his thoughts private. It was on a Tuesday evening in late October, under the dim, amber glow of a street lamp that had just flickered to life, that Elias first saw Clara. The tenement stairways were narrow and steep, a shared artery for the building's occupants, a place where neighbors brushed shoulders but rarely spoke. Elias was climbing to the third floor, tired from a long day of staring at columns of numbers. He heard the click of a door latch above him and looked up. A woman was descending, carrying a basket heavy with laundry. She moved carefully, her hand gripping the worn iron banister. Elias stepped back against the peeling wall to allow her room to pass. As she drew near, the light from the landings above illuminated her face. She was perhaps 30, with dark hair pulled back tightly and eyes that held a look of gentle, practiced reserve. She wore a simple dress, the fabric faded from frequent washing, mended at the cuff. She did not look at him directly. Her gaze was fixed on the uneven steps, as if ensuring her footing was the only thing that mattered in the world. But as she passed him, she paused for the briefest fraction of a second. She inclined her head, a small, silent acknowledgement of his courtesy. She smelled faintly of soap and rain. "Good evening," Elias said, his voice raspy from disuse. "Good evening," she replied. Her voice was soft, barely audible over the sound of a baby crying 2 floors down. She continued down the stairs, and Elias watched her until she turned out of sight onto the second-floor landing. He did not know her name, nor where she worked. He only knew that for a moment, the oppressive loneliness of the building had lifted. From that night on, their lives settled into a pattern of silent intersection. They were neighbors who shared a staircase and a street, but nothing more. Elias learned that her name was Clara, because the landlady once shouted it down the hall when rent was overdue. He learned that she worked at a garment factory on the west side, because he often saw her leaving the building in the early morning mist, her coat collar turned up against the chill, heading toward the streetcar line. Their encounters were fleeting. In the mornings, they might pass on the stoop. Elias would be tightening his scarf, and Clara would be checking the latch on her purse. Their eyes would meet, a silent exchange of fatigue and recognition, and then they would step out into the noisy river of the commute, swept away in different directions. There were no long conversations. Society dictated a certain distance between unmarried men and women who were not formally introduced, and their own temperaments made them both wary of intrusion. Yet, a language developed between them, composed entirely of small gestures. If Elias saw Clara coming up the street with a heavy bag of groceries, he would pause at the building door to hold it open, waiting a few seconds longer than necessary. Clara, in turn, would leave the hallway copy of the evening newspaper folded neatly on the newel post when she was finished with it. Knowing Elias liked to read the shipping news before bed, it was an economy of affection, stripped of all pretense. They found comfort in the mere knowledge of the other's presence. As the months turned into a year, the city around them began to shift. The war in Europe, which had seemed so far away, began to cast its shadow over the streets. Posters appeared on the brick walls urging men to enlist, and the newspapers were filled with maps of front lines and casualty lists. The noise of the city seemed to take on a sharper, more anxious edge. People argued in the delis and lined up for blocks to buy sugar and flour. Elias felt the change acutely. He watched his co-workers leave for the army one by one. He knew his time was coming. His draft number was in the lower range. The thought of leaving the city, of leaving the rhythm of his life, filled him with a quiet dread. But deeper than the fear of the war was the fear of leaving without saying the things he had kept locked inside his chest. He did not know how to speak them. He was a man of numbers, not words, and the social proprieties of the time felt like an insurmountable wall. The turning point came on a warm evening in May 1917. The air was heavy with the promise of summer, and the windows of the tenement were thrown open to catch the breeze. Elias had received his notice earlier that day. He was to report to camp in 2 weeks. He walked up the stairs slowly, his heavy boots echoing on the wood. He reached the second-floor landing just as Clara was unlocking her door. She turned, her key still in the lock. She looked at him, and perhaps she saw something different in his face. The worry lines etched a little deeper, the slump in his shoulders. She did not smile her usual polite, distant smile. Instead, she waited. "The world is getting louder," Elias said. It was a strange thing to say, but it was all he could manage. Clara nodded. She leaned back against her doorframe, the laundry basket forgotten at her feet. "It is difficult to hear oneself think," she said softly. "Have you ever wondered about the one that got away? That person you met, felt an instant connection with, but for some reason, life just pulled you in different directions. It's a feeling many of us know, that lingering what if. Today, we're diving into a story that feels like it's straight out of a movie. A tale of two people, Elias and Clara, and a love that refused to be forgotten by time. It all started on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in a cozy, tucked-away bookstore. Elias was reaching for the last copy of a classic novel, and at that very same moment, so was Clara. Their hands brushed. A little jolt of static electricity passed between them, and they both looked up. It was one of those moments. They laughed, and Elias, ever the gentleman, insisted she take the book. But Clara suggested they share it. They ended up talking for hours, huddled in a corner of the bookstore, sharing stories, dreams, and secrets over the scent of old paper and brewing coffee. The connection was undeniable, a spark that had ignited into a warm, comfortable flame in just a few hours. They felt like they had known each other for years. As the bookstore was closing, they exchanged numbers, promising to meet again that weekend. Both of them walked away with a smile they couldn't wipe off their faces, convinced they had stumbled upon something truly special. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. A sudden family emergency called Elias out of the country. In the frantic rush, his phone, the old, fragile kind, was damaged beyond repair. All his contacts, including Clara's number, were lost. He had no last name, no social media connection, just a first name and the memory of her bright, curious eyes. He was heartbroken. Meanwhile, Clara waited. The weekend came and went. She called his number, but it was disconnected. She even went back to the bookstore every day for a week, hoping to catch a glimpse of him, but he never came. With a heavy heart, she eventually had to accept that, for whatever reason, their beautiful beginning was also an abrupt end. She tucked the memory of their conversation away, a bittersweet chapter in her life story. Years passed. Life went on, as it always does. Elias built a successful career as an architect, traveling the world, designing beautiful buildings. He dated, he had relationships, but no one ever quite measured up to the memory of the girl in the bookstore. That brief encounter had set a standard for connection that he found impossible to replicate. The what-if of Clara haunted his quiet moments. Clara became a celebrated author. Ironically, her first successful novel was a romance inspired by a brief, magical encounter in a bookstore. Her readers fell in love with the story of two souls who connect instantly but are torn apart by circumstance. She poured all her wonder and her slight sorrow into its pages. She too moved on, but a small part of her always wondered what happened to the kind man who so easily saw into her soul. Now, let's fast forward 10 years. 10 years of separate lives, separate experiences, separate joys, and separate heartaches. Elias was back in his hometown to oversee a new project, the renovation of a historic city library. He loved projects like this, breathing new life into old spaces that held countless stories. One afternoon, while reviewing blueprints in the library's main hall, he overheard a familiar name being announced. "We're so honored to have the brilliant author, Clara Vance, here today for a reading and signing of her latest bestseller." Elias froze. Clara, could it be? His heart started pounding in his chest. He looked towards the stage, and there she was, a little older, more confident, but with the same bright, curious eyes that he had never forgotten. He was stunned, rooted to the spot. It was her. After all this time, it was really her. He watched her speak, her voice just as captivating as he remembered. She read a passage from her new book, and then, She began to talk about the inspiration for her very first novel. She told the audience about a rainy afternoon in a little bookstore, about a chance meeting with a stranger over the last copy of a classic book. She spoke of an instant profound connection and the mystery of what came next. As she spoke, her eyes scanned the crowd, a wistful smile on her face. At that moment, their eyes met across the room. Recognition dawned on Clara's face, a wave of shock, disbelief, and a dozen other emotions washing over her. The world around them seemed to fade away. The applause of the crowd, the lights, the librariette, all disappeared. There was only him, and there was only her. After the event, as the crowd dispersed, Elias made his way toward her. He felt a nervous energy he hadn't felt since he was a teenager. What would he say after 10 years of silence? He didn't have to worry. As soon as she saw him approaching, Clara met him halfway. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic speeches, just a simple, breathless Elias from her, and a soft Clara from him. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, a decade of unspoken words and missed moments hanging in the air between them. "I lost your number," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "My phone broke. I tried to find you. I went back to the bookstore." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes. "I waited," she whispered. "I went back, too, and that was all it took." The wall of time, of misunderstanding, and of wondering, crumbled. They spent the rest of the evening catching up, filling in the gaps of the last 10 years. They discovered that their paths had almost crossed several times. He had read her first book without ever realizing he was the inspiration. She had admired a building he designed in a city she visited, never knowing the architect was the man she couldn't forget. Their connection, which had been put on pause for a decade, picked up right where it left off, only now it was deeper, richer, and more profound. They had both lived, grown, and become the people they were meant to be, and now they had found their way back to each other. The story of Elias and Clara isn't just about a second chance at love. It's a powerful reminder that some connections are so strong they can withstand time, distance, and silence. Their story is a beautiful testament to the idea that it's never too late for a happy ending, or in their case, a new beginning. Thank you so much for watching and for letting me share this incredible story with you. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more stories that warm the heart and inspire the soul. Until next time, keep believing in the magic of connection.